What is up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Respect Her Game. I'm Laura Stickells. Annabelle Hasselbeck is back in studio with me today. We're going to talk a lot of WNBA today because that season just ended on Sunday. And we also have our inaugural game of Would You Rather, RHG version that we're going to play on the show that I know I'm really excited about. But Annabelle, how are you? It's great to have you back in studio.
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I know I'm excited for our little game. This was Laura's idea, and I'm really excited about it. I don't think we shared fully our Would You Rathers, so it'll be a nice little surprise.
Yes, I haven't actually seen the Would You Rathers that Annabelle wrote for me, so yeah, it's gonna be we're gonna be flying by the seat of our pants here. I don't know if that's the right analogy to use, but whatever. Anyways, how was your weekend? Now you're 23. You just turned 23. Your birthday was last week, but how was your weekend?
It was great. Thank you. And thank you for the awesome graphic for my birthday. It was funny. My dad put it up on our TV when I got back from a workout earlier that day. And so he had it big on the screen. I was like, oh my goodness, I love it. But thank you for that. And yeah, it was nice to be in Nashville, Tennessee. I was not expecting it to be as warm as it was. In Nashville, you know, it's late October. Like, you would think it's starting to cool down a little bit, but absolutely not. I mean, it was hot out, so kind of crazy.
Okay, well, speaking of, like, weather, it was the perfect fall weekend, actually, in Boston this past weekend. The perfect weather for Head of the Charles. I obviously rode in college, which I know I talk about a lot on this show. But my teammates came back for Head of the Charles Regatta, which was so fun. I got to see Allie, Bridget, Michelle. We all got breakfast one day. I got breakfast with Michelle and Bridget on Friday, and then I got breakfast with Allie and Michelle on Sunday. And they actually came to this was a work trip for them, essentially, because they weren't just here to visit me. They were here to compete in the Charles. I cannot believe it. But they rode an Alumni 8, so tons of props to them. It was the first year that Stanford Lightweights actually got a bid to row in the Charles, a lightweight boat. They had rowed, like, Stanford Openweights had boats in the past, but this was the first Stanford lightweight boat. And in order to be able to, you have to, like, finish high enough to be able to get another bid again next year, essentially, to requalify for next year. And credit to them, they got another bid for next year, and they're like, oh, Laura, like, you know, you should do it again next year with us now that, like, we've got another bid again. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, there is no way you could get me back in a boat. I mean, I don't know, maybe, but, like, the amount of training that would have to go into this, because I asked them just out of curiosity, I'm like, oh, like, you know, what did you guys rate at? Thinking they would say, like, oh, like, you know, 25 or 26. Like, this is not any leisurely alumni race down the Charles. Like, these girls are in it to win it. I like a 26, like, the way that rowing works is, like, the stroke rates is how many, like, strokes you take per minute. And, like, for instance, when I was rowing in college, we would rate probably at, like, and I was in the best shape of my life, we would rate at, like, a 37, 38 probably in our 2Ks. And, like, in our 5Ks head races, like Head of the Charleses, we'd probably rate at, like, I don't know, probably like a 34. But a 30 is still really high. Like, 34 would be really pushing it. I think, like, more like you're rating around 30 to 32. I'm like, oh, like, what'd you guys rate at? I think they'd say, like, a 26, which is still fast. Like, that is fast. Like, if you're just leisurely rowing, you're closer to a 20. They're like, oh, Kate Hickey had us rowing at a 30. And I was like, I couldn't, like, I wouldn't make it.
Wow.
I was like,
they must have prepared for that.
I was like, I literally would not make it to the finish line. And Kate Hickey, she's one of my teammates from college. She was usually stroke seat when I was on the team. And she is awesome. Like, I truly love Kate Hickey. She is such a competitor and, like, a phenomenal rower, but I cannot row Head of the Charles if Kate Hickey is in stroke seat, because if she has us going at a 30, I'm literally dead. And when I saw them on Sunday too, they showed me their hands, and I was
word.
Like,
those are brutal.
They are brutal. I mean, that's what your hands look like truly when you row, but at least, like, you get some calluses on them. That's from 2 days of rowing, because they rowed just a practice day on Friday, and then I think they did a practice day on Friday, the race was on Saturday, and their hands were just, like, absolutely destroyed. And, like, yes, my hands were like that when I was in college, but I don't know, I had some sort of purpose behind it. Like, I feel like an alumni
reunion is the purpose. Yeah, exactly. So this is funny, Laura, because you took a really hard take being like, I will never do that in my whole life. Like, whatever that clip was, I cannot wait to screen grab it, send it to you, maybe play it on this show next year for the Head of the Charles when you are in the alumni boat.
I don't know. I kind of like, here's the thing, Annabelle. It's like, I kind of want to do it, but I'm also like terrified. This is me when I walked onto the Stanford rowing team. I was like, oh man, I like really want to do this, but like I'm really scared.
But you graduated,
but
and it worked out.
Somehow I did it. So maybe, yeah, I don't know. You might see me doing it next year, maybe not. Props to the Stanford lightweights for not only racing, but being super competitive and for getting that bid for next year. So if I want to race again, or if I want to...
You have the opportunity.
Yes, I have the opportunity to step back and do a boat for the first time since I graduated. But also, huge shout out to the Stanford Open weights who raced as well. And they actually won the whole thing, which is a big deal. I think there's like 50 boats in the alumni race. They won the whole thing, and they beat Texas. They beat the Texas lineup that won the NCAAs last year. That's what I heard. So, yeah, that Texas lineup came in second. Stanford won. I mean, there were like multiple Olympians in Stanford's boat, but even still, just an awesome weekend for them. And it was so great to see my teammates too. There's nothing like the bond that you have with your teammates. I know you know, especially when
I have alumni weekend this weekend at Boston College, so I will get to see a lot of my former teammates. So excited. But you're right, there is nothing like it because you go through the hardest times with those people, and they see you at your best. They see you at your worst at 5 a.m. and all the things, the ups and downs. And so, yeah, teammates are really strong.
Yeah, nothing brings you together like those blisters on your hands.
Yeah, those are no joke.
Yeah, no joke. Well, speaking of champions, congrats to the Stanford Open weights again. There is a new champion in the WNBA, and that is the New York Liberty, as they beat the Minnesota Lynx 67-62 in overtime on Sunday in Game 5. And my biggest takeaway from, well, first of all, the whole series was just like extremely competitive, and you wanted it to go to 7 games. Thank God they're doing that next year because you didn't want it to end. But my biggest takeaway from it truly was the environment. And there was this tweet that I saw which compared the Game 5 at Barclays Center to a 2019 Lynx game, or excuse me, a 2019 Liberty game when they were still at, they were at the, oh shoot, what's it called? I wrote it down. Yeah, the Westchester County Center, which is where they played in 2019. And it truly looked like a high school basketball game, like one that I would go to when I was living in Bishop in a town of 3,000 people, and compared it to what it looked like on Sunday night when it truly looked like a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. And it's just a testament to when you invest in a league, when you invest in women's sports, how far it can really come in 5 years.
The environment just through the screen was crazy. I mean, I wasn't there, you weren't there, but you could hear the defense chants. And it really threw me back to when I grew up in Seattle, Washington. My parents would take us to Seattle Storm games all the time. And that was such an event. It felt like more than just a basketball game. It felt like really a fan base that you were a part of, and they would do bring the kids out on the court, and they would have the crazy lights and awesome music, and that's really what this playoff run was and these finals were. And there were even like bracelets that I think people were wearing. I couldn't quite tell from the TV, but it seemed like everyone had bracelets on that were kind of timed up like a Taylor Swift concert. I was like, this is no joke what they have going on here. I was like, is it a light show? Is it a buff? Is it on their wrist? So just really cool to see that. And like you said, it does show when you invest in something, really cool things can happen.
Yeah. I mean, the game went to overtime, which we'll get to in a minute. It went to overtime because of an Alana Smith foul. But first, I think we should just talk about the performance of the Liberty, because this game was not a normal Liberty game. Like, Sabrina Ionescu shot 1 for 19 from the floor, which is unheard of. And Breanna Stewart wasn't great either. She went for 4 for 15 with 13 points and 15 rebounds. But Jonquel Jones, I mean, she is known for playing really well in the finals. She obviously had 2 MVP caliber finals series when she played with the Sun. Obviously, the Sun didn't win those 2 finals, but she still, was the highlight in those series for that team. But truly, she's great in the playoffs and was great again this year. Truly brilliant, honestly, in Game 5, and they would not have won without her. Also, the bench, like Niara Sabally was key in the final quarter of that game coming off the bench. They wouldn't have won without her either. And Kayla Thornton, obviously a huge defensive presence and really brought a spark when they needed one.
Yeah, and it just shows you a lot about the culture of that Liberty team, that like relentlessness, that resilience, because you go into these championship games thinking, okay, our top players, they're going to lead the way. They're going to be scoring the points. They're going to be the ones who are doing the majority of that work, right, to get on the board. But that didn't happen. And so if Jones didn't do what she did, now Sabrina her legacy goes down not the way that she would want it. You have a bad game in the finals and you don't win, right? But she was able to protect that by stepping up and making those plays.
Yeah. And like I said, the game did go to OT because of that Alana Smith foul. And I remember watching this live and I was thinking like, ooh, like even I don't think that's a foul. And when they played the replay of it, I really didn't think it was a foul. But basically this foul put Brianna Stewart back at the free throw line with down 2. Liberty were down 2 at the time with 5 seconds left. Stewart had like just missed 2 critical free throws like a minute before. And it was kind of like this really interesting moment because you're like, on the one hand, this is a really interesting storyline because Stewart is back at the free throw line when she had just missed like 2, which you thought would be, game losing, essentially missed free throws before she has this opportunity to redeem herself. I'm like, that's really interesting. But on the other hand, I'm like, I don't even think she should be at the free throw line here to begin with because I don't think that foul was really a foul. And on the one hand, I'm like, okay, like 5 more minutes of this really great basketball game, 5 more minutes of what's been this really great series. But I'm like, if the Lynx don't win this game, it's just not going to quite feel right. And I don't want that to take away from, like, the Liberty or the fact that they won this championship. But I just think it's, like, it just brings you back to officiating. And officiating is clearly so hard because I don't think there's a single league out there that's, like, they love their officiating. But, yeah, just kind of a bummer that did end up being one of the storylines of the game.
It's tough because you think, okay, if this exact play happened in the first quarter, the second quarter, even the third quarter, it probably would not have been a foul, it happens in a lot of sports, right? We see this across the board. We've seen it in our own lives. But the refs, they're a part of the game. They're a part of the environment, all of it. The fans, the coaches, the players talking to them the whole game. They feel that emotion. They get caught up in the moment. And you have to imagine that this was oh, shoot, like I'm in New York. The Liberty is the home team. Like you got to imagine that a lot of that pressure was also on them to potentially send them into overtime with those 2 free throws. So it stinks because you never want that game to kind of be determined on a play like that, on a foul of such marginal contact, right? Like that was the word that people were using to describe it. It was like the contact was so little. And then to watch the whole game and see how physical it was and how many times that probably was a foul, right? So it is really upsetting, especially for the Lynx, but that's sports. Like you get over it. You have to because that's just part of the game.
Yeah, I feel like looking back, it was really impossible to argue that it was anything other than incidental contact. Obviously, after the game, Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve was very disappointed, and here's what she had to say.
Coach. I know all the headlines will be Reeve cries foul. Bring it on, right? Bring it on, because this was stolen from us. Bring it on.
Yeah, so she really held nothing back there. It was kind of interesting, actually, because I listened to the whole part of that press conference that the Lynx did, and she talked about that right after she was talking about Niara Sabally and how well she played. It was kind of funny. It was just like a comment that she threw in at the very end. Nobody had even really asked her about the call, which I thought was interesting to that point in the press conference, because this was like 10 or 11 or 12 minutes in, and she was just talking about how great Sabally was to that point or throughout the series. And then suddenly she's, like, bring it on.
Well, probably hit her. She probably realized that she's probably trying to be positive, like, okay, reflect on the good parts of the season, what happened, we had an amazing run. And then, wait a second, that's how we lost. Like, it probably, like, kind of hit her in that moment, too. And I do think, though, if she didn't say, like, this is what's going to be in the press, this is what people are going to be talking about, like, bring it on, I think if she didn't preface it with that, it probably wouldn't have blown up the way that it did. But she did, and then everyone's like, all right, let's talk about it. Let's make it the thing. But, yeah, it just really stinks for them to have to feel like that was such a big part of the game.
Yeah. Just speaking really quick, too, about Niara Sabally, which I totally forgot to mention originally. Like, she played with Sabrina in college in Oregon, or at Oregon, and they didn't get to play in the NCAA playoffs in 2020 when they were on a team together, and it seemed like that team was destined to win the national championship that year. So it was really cool for them to at least, come back together and to see Niara play so well. But Napheesa Collier, obviously she was also crushed, and she spoke with the media as well on Tuesday after she went home to Minnesota.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be appreciative of this team and, see how special this season was. I think that loss is something I'll never get over. To have it in that way where it just feels super unjust. I don't think that's something that I'll be able to get over. It's different if you feel like you lose a game. But it's really easy to love this team. We got back yesterday, we had all of our medical, and still we were like, let's go to one last dinner together because we'll never be the same group again. So this team is just really close, and I'm so proud of everything we did this year, and we're so close to getting our goals. So yeah, it's a really tough ending.
What she said about it's one thing to lose, but it's another thing to lose and really feel like you never got a fair shot. That really resonated with me because I feel like there's so many times that I've even experienced just man, I lost something, and it's if I just lost because I wasn't good enough or I wasn't, the best person here, that's one thing, but to feel like I was just never really even given a chance, that's another, and that's really all you want as an athlete. But I also, really appreciated, too, what she said about her team and how much she loves them, and that's something that this group is never going to forget. It's clear that this Lynx team was very close, and they meant a lot to each other, but what stood out to you about that sound?
Yeah, well, I just think in sports in general, it's more fun, and you almost have a better chance at not having any external factors when the refs just let you play, right? Yeah. And it's almost overly aggressive, and it's not okay, now we have to cater what we're doing, even some of our strategy to the refs. I know in some of my college lacrosse games, because of the way that the refs were calling the game, we had to literally change parts of our game plan and how we were playing certain players, what we were doing on defense. It's part of the game and how the refs call it. And so I think just looking back, something that officiating in general can take from this moment in the WNBA Finals is okay, how are we going to call games now? Do we want to be more on that aggressive side, more blowing the whistle, or do we want to just kind of back off and also know how it gets heated in these games when other games have gone into overtime? Just having that, refs are human, right?
Yeah.
These are human beings. They feel the emotion. They get caught up in it as well. And so I think just that awareness of, hey, we'd rather let them play and let the aggression and let them kind of dictate there rather than us dictating the game.
Yeah. No, I'd love to get your perspective on that because all of the sports that I played never really had refs in that sense. I was more doing distance sports or individual sports. I never had to cater the way I play towards a ref.
That's why you're so nice, because you don't have that built up anger in you.
No, well, I'm really glad to get your perspective on it, and that's something that I was actually wanting to ask you was just what do you think the right step is for the league to take, or if you were a player and you're okay, this isn't, I don't like the way that this finals series was reffed, because both teams actually had problems with the reffing throughout this series. What do you think is the right step for the league to take? I know you said let them play a little bit more, but how do you move forward?
Yeah, you really just need a standard, you need to standardize everything. Yeah. And something that was cool throughout my lacrosse experience is in our preseason, we would have refs come to our practices, but they weren't there to really ref us. Partially they were there to do that, but they were really there to train other refs and use that first couple weeks before the season started to train the other refs that would be coming to our college games. And there they would say, hey, that might look I could literally hear their conversations. They'd be hey, that might look what you think that is, but really it's not. And so I think that discussion where refs can talk to each other, there can be an overall general consensus. How are we going to handle this situation? Because it's sports. Everything looks different. Things are constantly changing. You're going to be at different angles. People's even body types make things look different. I know for me, sometimes a foul that I would make wouldn't look like a foul, but if somebody else made it, it would probably look like a foul. Just kind of your disposition, how aggressive you come across and all the things. And so I think just to standardize and get those refs together in the same room.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate that we're having this discussion because it really is so exciting that the Liberty were finally able to win their first championship after being at the finals 5 times prior, their first championship as an original team. They were one of the original teams in the WNBA. So it took them a while. while, but they did it. And a big part of it was Jonquel Jones, who averaged 17.8 points, 7.6 rebounds while shooting at 56% from the field throughout the finals. And she said in her acceptance speech, "Y'all know my story. Y'all know how many times I've been denied it, but it was delayed. That's all it was." And I really think when it comes to JJ, knowing her story is so important. So without further ado, here's a clip of the My Story that NESN did on her back in 2022 when she was still with the Connecticut Sun.
How do you react when you're told you can't succeed? Do you buy into the doubt, or does it fuel your fire?
I've always been in a position where I'm overlooked. First it was coming from the Bahamas, being this kid that was from the Bahamas playing JV, and it was somebody telling me, oh, if I was you, I would go back home. And in my head, it's like, no, I'm not going back home and get better, and then I'm gonna get on the court and play, and then I'm gonna show you.
Sunshine, palm trees, white sandy beaches, and crystal clear water. For many, it's paradise. But just a few miles away from Freeport, Grand Bahamas, the future MVP of the WNBA is dreaming of becoming a star. What was it like to grow up in the Bahamas?
You know, we could run around all day, ride bicycles all day. Just a lot of freedom. It was a lot of the community kind of raising us and just everybody being connected.
14 miles west of Freeport is where Jonquel grew up, 8 Mile Rock, one of the oldest communities in the Grand Bahamas. The 8 miles of rocky shoreline consist of 11 sub-settlements, 2 of them home to Jonquel and Indiana Pacer Buddy Hield.
And that's where most of the people live on the island because they can't afford things. Everything is cheap. Everything is like, corner store type vibe. Like a lot of people call it poor. I call it a way of life.
You know, you always had an eye on you and always, always an adult around, but still that freedom to just be a kid and just enjoy everything that the Bahamas has to offer.
With just over 1,000 residents on 8 Mile Rock, youth sports brought 2 future stars together.
Growing up, I played every sport in school.
We went to the same elementary school in the Bahamas, and we ran track together, and we just known as like great track athletes. She just gifted all around.
Was always the kid getting out of school early to go play something or run track and field.
She's one of those kids like always laughing, good charisma, good attitude around her. She's always positive. She's a fun personality.
I've just always had that love for sports and especially team sports.
One of those team sports that resonated with Jonquel was basketball, the game that would change her life forever. Who was the first person to influence you and really teach you how to play?
It was my dad. My dad was a high school basketball coach at the time, so I remember like going with him to watch him coach the basketball team and like telling them to like keep their hands up on defense and boxing out. He used to play like the YMCA night league games, and like I remember going up in the stands and like standing up watching him play and just like my eyes following him up and down the court because I just wanted to watch him play, and I was a little kid just. Everything was new and exciting to me. So my love for basketball definitely comes from him.
What was playing organized basketball in the Bahamas like?
I know for me, like we would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning before school just so we could get into the gym, and like us having gym time is like, it was amazing. Like, oh my gosh, we actually get to go in the gym. We had a lot of coaches and people that were invested in, in our growth, but just not as many resources as like US athletes would have.
On the island, we were really good, but every time American team comes down, they're more disciplined, they're more skilled.
It was probably 5th or 6th grade. We always did this thing where like this team from Florida would come to us and play one year. They tore us up. Like it was a crazy blowout. So it's like, I'm playing this every day. It's like, how are they so much better than me? I remember just after we lost that game, like just working the whole year and just thinking like, the next time they come back, I'm gonna be better. And the next time they came back, I was better, but they still blew us out. But I just remember saying to myself, like, I gotta get over there because it's something different that's going on over there. And I want a piece of that, like I want a part of that.
Jonquel will get that opportunity thanks to a high school coach in Maryland. Enter Diane Richardson.
I was coaching high school basketball in Maryland, and there was a player there from the Bahamas. She called me up and said, Coach, there's a kid in the Bahamas that I think would benefit from what you do here. And I called, talked to her mom and talked to JJ, and her mom said that she really wanted to come to the States to play basketball. So I told them, what the tuition was at our school. It was just too much. They said they couldn't afford to pay.
So I begged my mommy for years, like, Mommy, please, like, just let me go to the States. Let me go to the States to play basketball. Like, they're so much better. And like, for years she was just like, no, like, you're not ready for that. I'm not letting you out of my sight yet. Like, you're my baby.
And I'd check on her in a couple months. And then about 6 months later, she was 13 at the time, I went to my husband and I said, this is such a great kid. She's such a nice kid. God is just kind of telling me, can we sponsor her? And he said, yes. So her parents came over, Mom and Dad and JJ came over, and they were to spend a week with my family. After the week, her parents said that they decided that this would be a good place, and my family was a great environment for JJ.
Finally, 8th grade year came around, and I had the opportunity, and we talked about it. And obviously, I was begging her for years, so she knew that I wanted to go.
They decided to sign the paperwork for us to become her legal guardians and raise her here in the United States.
I call her my second mommy, like my second mom. I'm happy that she was able to be placed into my life by God, because I feel like it's nothing but divine intervention.
What a special story. I mean, obviously that's just a part of it. If you want to watch the whole thing, go to the NESN 360 app. It'll have the whole MyStory there. The entire thing is about 23 minutes. We just were only able to watch a little clip there, but truly, like, you think about all of the things that had to come together for her even to come to the United States. First of all, her high school basketball coach had to show that kind of investment in her, and then her parents had to be willing to send their daughter from the Bahamas to the U.S. without them. And JJ had to be willing to do it and go alone. So she moved when she was only 14 years old. Like, truly an amazing story. And I think it's nice to see something like that come full circle for somebody and get to see them win a WNBA championship and play so well, and not only get to play in it, but also have their story recognized. Because I think something that's been disappointing in the past is that these women do have really good stories, but there just hasn't been a media investment involved that's allowed for them to be shared. So truly just amazing.
Yeah, and I just wish I was there with her in that moment when they won, for her to be like, man, I remember when I watched my dad play at the YMCA, right? And now I am here in this environment with people with light up bracelets, right? Like in the crowd, in the atmosphere that was there. It is so cool, and what an awesome story.
I know they were talking about doing a parade in the Bahamas, so that would be awesome to watch. I hope there's a lot of social media footage or something coming out of that if it happens, because yeah, that would be really cool. And I know, obviously, it would mean so much to JJ. Well, speaking about like the growth, right? You're saying being in the Barclays Center with those light up bracelets. We all each have our 3 takeaways from the WNBA season in its entirety. And one of mine is kind of like what you're saying, just like, the light up bracelets, everything, just the entire league has grown. And it's really interesting because obviously this season there's more fans, there's more viewers, but it's come at a time too when the league is almost investing in itself. So it's like this perfect, like, crossing almost. And yeah, my first biggest takeaway is just like more. So more viewers, more fans, more money invested by advertisers, more games. The league decided to go from 40 to 44 games this season. Team owners being willing to invest more money into their facilities. We saw, obviously, like in Arizona, everything that team did, how amazing those facilities looked at the All-Star break. And it's led to players being willing to opt out of the CBA, so, and that's not necessarily a surprise. I know people were expecting them to do that, but truly, I think this season, the players have realized, like, really what their worth is, and it's going to be interesting to see what deal they come up with the league. They don't have to come to a deal until about a year from now, so there's no immediately impending lockout. But it's going to be really interesting because the new media rights agreement kicks in 2026. So there's a year difference there where this new media rights deal, it's reported that the league is going to get paid a lot more. So that's when they'll have the money to pay players essentially. So it's going to be interesting how it all turns out. I think the players are going to be paid a lot more than they have in the past, hopefully, like knock on wood. But
that's your hand. This is wood.
I don't think this is wood, is it? I think it's plastic. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. Anyways, yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I think they'll get paid a lot more, probably still not what they're worth, but yeah, it's a great time for the league. What's one of yours?
Well, you said more, and that really, I know that was one of your takeaways. We kind of chatted about it a little bit before, but that sparked a question in me as one of my takeaways. Okay, like, so what's the change, right? So, like, what are we going to see that's going to be different? Is it going to be surpass the viewership that we already saw? We know that the playoffs are changing. So what does that look like? How do team rosters change because of the longer playoffs, right? Like, your body is tired enough going through the 5-game series. Now it's going to be 7. Like, that's totally different. So I guess for me, just wondering, what's the change going to look like? I know there was so much change, even just from like being someone who was scrolling on Instagram daily, right? Like, oh wow, like we did our little fit check segment, new outfits we're seeing from the WNBA and the walk-up fits and all the things. So I just think for me, one of the biggest takeaways is a question, like, what now? What are we going to see that's going to be different? And a question I have is, it was so fun to have the Suns come play at TD Garden. Like, can we make that a long-term thing? Can we get them to Boston? I don't know.
One change we're going to see is obviously more players and more teams, because there's 3 new expansion teams coming, one to Golden State, one to Toronto, and one to Portland. Obviously the Golden State one coming next year, but that also means more players, right? More players coming out of college with opportunities to play, which is so exciting because that means more rookies. And that was another one of my takeaways this season. It's impossible to talk about the WNBA in 2024 without talking about the rookie class, because they really brought so much momentum in from that NCAA, Sweet 16, basically, on all the storylines that really came with the March Madness. And yeah, they totally brought it. And there's, this big question, will these rookies live up to the hype? Will, how they play in college be able to translate to the WNBA, and will they be as good? And you saw them still be able to make, huge impacts. Like, obviously, Caitlin Clark she was by far the best player in college, and A'ja Wilson is still clearly the best player in the WNBA, but you still saw Caitlin Clark be able to make a big impact. And beyond just Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, there were other rookies that made great impacts as well. Before her injury, Cameron Brink, we've talked about her a lot this season, but Cameron Brink was probably the best rookie in the class. And Kate Martin, I think she is such a good story for the Aces, because she literally I don't know if this is exactly true, but she said that she just went to the draft to support Caitlin Clark, who was her teammate at Iowa.
Which is wild.
Yeah, and then she ends up getting drafted. And not only does she get drafted, but she makes the team, which is really hard to do in and of itself. And she becomes, a big part of that Aces team until she was injured. And even Camila Cardoso, she became a defensive force for the Sky by the end of the season. So I think there were just so many great rookie storylines, and I'm glad that the league is expanding, because it just means we'll get to have more of them.
Yeah, well, that was kind of my takeaway, in a sense that, wow, look at how well these rookies did in this league, right? You're coming out of college, which you would think there is a huge transition from college to the pros, but at the same time, if you're executing at that high level in college, you're able to bring that confidence and bring that game into your WNBA career. So I think it's a positive for girls and women who are competing at the highest level in college, and they say, hey, I might have the opportunity to be Rookie of the Year. I might have the opportunity to win a WNBA final. However, at the same time, both A'ja Wilson and Caitlin Clark did not win this championship. So it does just show you at the same time how competitive the WNBA really is.
Yeah. And something, too, that I loved about this season, my final takeaway, was that pop culture really embraced the WNBA. And originally, when I wrote this takeaway, I said the WNBA really embraced pop culture. But I'm like, actually, no, that was the other way around. It was finally like everybody really started to embrace the WNBA. People started getting really invested in the walk-up outfits, which, we now do our fit checks. But even, something that stood out to me was Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark were sitting courtside at an NBA game, and they were put up on the Jumbotron. It's like, oh, the stars are here. It's like, now these players are really being considered stars, and like they're getting the same ovation that typically NBA players get when they go to WNBA games. So that was really cool. And even like the mascots becoming a big deal. I know Ellie became a really big deal for the New York Liberty throughout this season. Obviously, like, she's a crazy mascot, and people were saying, like, if the mascots could, they want to see Gritty and Ellie together because they think that would be a great duo. And just that kind of discourse, I think, is so important for bringing the league forward, because it makes the league and these players really accessible to everybody, not only just the people that are like dialed in on the WNBA every single day.
Yeah, and I love that you said that, because that's what my third takeaway really is how is this last WNBA season specifically going to impact AAU travel basketball for young women? I played AAU travel basketball, and it was so transformative in my athletic career. I was put in such intense environments. I got to play with amazing athletes and amazing basketball players. But I wouldn't say the hype for the WNBA was where it is now. And even for these young girls who are going to these travel basketball tournaments and playing at the highest level in AAU, not only are you involved in basketball when you're playing on the court, but then you're going to go on your phone, you're going to watch TV, and you're going to be able to see more WNBA content. I think it's so important because you want to have someone to look up to. You want to have, oh yeah, that could be me someday. And that's always existed. I'm not saying that it hasn't always existed, but it's just more prevalent now. And I know that if I was a young girl and I was playing AAU basketball back then, or right now, I would just feel a different sense of pride about what I was doing in my sport.
Yeah, it gives you a why, right? It gives you a why for why you're doing something. Really quick, before we move on to our next thing, something else that I really love about the WNBA are the team names. They're so pretty. You've got the Chicago Sky, you have the Dallas Wings.
I never thought about that. That's a great point.
So you've got the Connecticut Sun, the Las Vegas Aces, and who really needs to take note? Is BOS Nation.
Yeah.
BOS Nation should take note, because that name, honestly, I'm here to say it, the name is terrible. Obviously, we talked last week just about their branding campaign, which is all around the slogan, too many balls, which I cannot believe that I'm saying on the podcast right now, but that is what they decided to come out with. People hated it, including us, and a lot of communities took offense to it. Credit to them. They did apologize. They apologized to the LGBTQ plus and trans community, because obviously that phrase "too many balls" is offensive to those communities, and they definitely deserved an apology. But I think just beyond that, I think there's a lot of communities that deserved an apology. I think basically every sports team, female sports team in Boston, really kind of deserved an apology for just getting shunned from their campaign, essentially, not even being acknowledged. And yeah, I just don't understand, because who are you targeting with this campaign? Because it clearly wasn't women's sports fans, and it wasn't really even Boston sports fans either, because it was almost like they were trying to show Boston sports fans, you guys don't really matter.
It was so bad. And I was in Nashville, Tennessee, okay? And I was introducing myself to someone. I said, "Where are you from?" Boston. Immediately, first thing out of their mouth, "Oh my gosh, that the soccer team, the name." And I was like, wow, you're not even from Boston, and you're just associating where I'm from with this news that broke. And so it reached a lot more people than I think they realized.
Yeah. So clearly it looks like they're willing to at least apologize. That is the first step, right? Apologizing for one thing. But I think beyond that, they've got it. I said this last week. They need to make an entirely different change. They need to change the name. I think, unfortunately, at this point, the name is associated with too many balls. And I don't think you can go forward with that. So I think really you need to change the name. You need to change the branding. Fortunately, the team doesn't start until 2026, so you still have time to do that. I know it's expensive, but you've got to prove to this fan base.
New video. You have time. We need a new video.
You have time.
Completely.
You need to prove to the fan base that you made a mistake and that you're willing to take accountability for it and change it. Anyways.
Yeah. That's what it is. And you said they have time. And something that did stand out to me about their apology was they said, "We hear you." They ended it with, "We hear you and we will, together." And I don't know. To me, I was like, no, nobody else had any involvement in this marketing campaign but the marketing team and anybody else who signed off on it. So it's not together. This was, "We hear you, we will, period." Not "we hear you, we will, together." That was on you. You have time to change it. get it done.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to leave this in the past for now. I'm sure more will come of it. We'll continue to cover the story because I enjoy talking about it. Like, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get heated there, but I just think that being creative is really fun, and having the opportunity to announce a sports team in the city of Boston. Like, are you kidding me? This is the best city to play on a professional sports team. Yeah. So there's a lot of weight and responsibility that comes with it.
All right. Well, there's a lot of things I would rather do than watch or wear a BOS Nation shirt at the moment. But we have our very own game of Would You Rather. I think we each have time to.
All right,
pick one.
let's do it. I'm ready.
This is going to become an RHG tradition. So, all right, you pick
PNC
first.
Sponsored.
Those are PNC sponsored.
Okay. For Laura. Ooh, okay. Laura, would you rather report on a Woo Sox game or on a Hockey East game?
Oh, wait. What? No.
Conflict of interest.
Wait, oh, my gosh.
Conflict of interest.
Wow. Wait, I do have to answer, right? Okay. Wow, that's really, really tough. Well, it really depends on who the Hockey East teams are. So, wow, I can't believe am I about to say Woo Sox? Like, hockey is probably the sport. Oh gosh, I don't know, maybe this is really tough here. Okay. I'm gonna go with Hockey East, but it's got to be like a top tier rivalry, like, UNH Maine, BU BC, any really, really great game. I don't want just like some, you don't lower tier games. Yeah, I'm not gonna name teams, but I think because there are some really, really good games in Hockey East, I'm gonna go with Hockey East.
Basically, if BC is in the mix, she wants to cover BC.
Okay, sure, AB. All right, let's see. What do we got for you? Oh, this is a really good one.
Okay.
This is really good. Would you rather see BC women's lacrosse win another national championship or BC football win its first NCAA championship?
Wow, that's good, but because of my ties and because my sister Mallory and a bunch of my best friends are still on the BC women's lacrosse team, I have to say BC women's lacrosse. Absolutely. However, like, if BC football won the national championship, man, I'll be the one carrying the goalpost. That will be me.
If BC never wins a national, but like, what if it was like, okay, BC football never gets to win a national championship, but BC women's lacrosse can.
Ride or die, BC Lax.
Wow, good for you.
Can't break it.
All right, well, we're gonna go. Do we want to do another?
Can I do one more?
Yeah,
let's do one more.
Let's do one more.
Okay. We're going to do this one. We talked about it, but let's see. Would you rather see the New York Liberty win a second title in a row or watch the Lynx make a comeback win?
Oh. I want to see the Lynx make a comeback win. I want to see them use what just happened to them for motivation, and I want to see them win next season, honestly. I want it to be same two teams in the finals, but this time I want to see the Lynx come out on top. I think like that would be a great storyline. I'm always in it for the storylines.
Good.
So
I like this game.
Yeah, this is fun. We're gonna keep this.
I kept wanting to take more. I'm like, next question. Kind of felt like a little challenge.
We're gonna put the cup back here. We'll get back to it next week. If you have Would You Rather, send them to us. Yeah. Definitely send them to us. We'll make sure we put some.
Just
in the
give
cup
Laura
for you.
the harder ones.
Yeah. Really quick, I need to give a shout out for my win of the week, and that is for Tyler Murray, who got to make his NBA regular season debut with the Knicks radio today, or it's not. Excuse me, not today. Last night with the Celtics. Well, obviously with the Knicks as they were covering the Celtics. Tyler, I'm so sorry. I totally just botched that for you. But anyways, truly, he has been such a wonderful friend and supporter over the past couple of years as I've really been pursuing this career. He used to be the voice of Hockey East, was the voice of the Worcester Red Sox for a really long time, and was a really great friend. And to see him get this opportunity with the New York Knicks, which is a team that he has grown up rooting for and loving, and getting to have his very first regular season game be at TD Garden, in the place where he has spent so much time over his life, is really incredible, and it meant so much to me as a friend to get to tune into Sirius XM radio and get to listen to him make his call last night. Really special.
That's awesome. I have a quick Quentin Post shout not WNBA. NBA. We're talking so much about the WNBA. Another NBA debut. Quentin Post, QP as he's known, will be playing for the Golden State Warriors in their opening game tonight and then their home opener on Sunday against the Clippers. So shout out QP. We are so excited for you. All the Eagles. I was texting with the head basketball manager last night, and he's just so excited for this guy.
Go QP. I love that you by accidentally said WNBA because I saw this tweet last night that made me laugh. It was like, did you know there's something called the MNBA and it's starting today? Like men's NBA. It's starting today. Yeah, like it's a joke. Did you know there's the MNBA and it's actually starting today? That made me laugh because truly the WNBA has taken the world by storm this season. And yeah, it was really great to get to cover them this year. And I know we're going to be talking more WNBA to come. And you know what? College basketball season is just starting. So looking forward to that too.
Got to pull up my corner three.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe
back in the day, we gotta pop a shot.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could get like a basketball here on the door or something. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Respect Her Game, and we'll see you all next week.